All right, welcome to today's Explainer. We are cracking the code on what is probably one of the most misunderstood events in a beekeeper's life, swarming. Look, for the bees, it's just reproduction. It's completely normal. But for us, it usually means a massive loss of your workforce, a huge hit to your honey yield, and honestly, a total loss of control over the colony. So let's just dive right in. We're going to uncover the hidden early clues of the swarming process way before it's too late to act. We're taking you from that classic beginner's panic straight to professional proactive control.
And honestly, this quote right here perfectly sets the stage for everything we're looking at today. Bees do not decide to swarm overnight. It's an absolutely crucial realization. You know, when a beginner spots a massive swarm just hanging from a tree branch, pure panic sets in. It feels like it came out of nowhere. But a pro knows that this biological impulse was building up for weeks. The absolute biggest mistake you can make is just waiting for that final phase to actually react.
So let's get into section 1, the secret start of the swarming impulse and how to spot those very first signs. We're going to look at how a booming, perfectly healthy-looking spring hive might actually be a ticking time bomb. Let's walk through this timeline, focusing way over on the left. Weeks before a swarm ever takes flight, you get this explosive spring growth. At first glance, you're thinking great, heavy pollen, strong flight activity, tons of bees, everything is perfect. But that excess energy, that is exactly where the swarming conditions kick off. Fast forward a bit, and days before, you hit overcrowding and a totally blocked brood nest. Hours before, capped queen cells, and then, boom, they're gone. Our main goal today is to focus strictly on the left side of this timeline, long before any of those cells get capped. Notice the stark contrast in mindsets here. The beginner is completely reactive, right? They pop open the hive, see huge queen cells getting capped, or worse, they literally see the swarm in a tree, and only then do they try to intervene. By that point, the process is deeply in its final phase. It's almost impossible to stop. But the pro mindset, it's all about being proactive. You're monitoring early signals. You're constantly evaluating if all those young bees actually have enough space and real work to do. Because believe it or not, unemployed young bees are one of the biggest triggers for the swarming impulse. Which brings us to section 2, overcrowding and brood nest blockage. Basically, the queen losing her space. Let's look at the very first major physical clue in our investigation. Picture an incredibly strong colony right before a major nectar flow, something like the acacia flow. You have to monitor this closely. Here's what happens. That intense nectar comes pouring in, and the bees start packing it directly into the central frames. Pollen and honey literally start blocking the brood nest. So from the outside, your hive looks fantastic, right? But inside, the queen has completely lost her free space to lay eggs. She's literally walled in. And that physical blockage triggers a massive biological shift. Think about it. When the queen has absolutely nowhere to lay her eggs, well, her egg laying naturally drops. And here is the truly fascinating part. Reduced egg laying equals less queen pheromones being produced. Now, why does that matter? Because those specific queen pheromones are the exact thing maintaining the stability of the entire colony. It's the glue holding them together. When she stops laying, those pheromones drop off a cliff, and this chemical shift acts as a biological green light for the workers. Without that strong chemical signal keeping them grounded, the bees just naturally transition right into a swarming state. Okay, let's step outside the hive for a second. It's super common to see large groups of young bees just hanging out at the front entrance. The classic beginner misconception is thinking, oh, they're just hot, they're ventilating, it's just bearding, no big deal. But the reality for a professional is totally different. If it's not insanely hot out and you have a strong colony with a good nectar flow and a full brood nest, those masses of bees hanging out at the front door are a huge red flag. It signals internal overload. They literally have no room and absolutely no available work to do inside. All right, section 3, early changes in bee behavior. How both the queen and the workers start acting differently. Let's see how all that internal pressure turns into noticeable behavioral shifts. Look at the fascinating biology behind this preparation. The worker bees intentionally start feeding the queen less. They literally put her on a diet. And why? Because a heavily laying queen is way too heavy to fly. By feeding her less, she slims down, becomes much faster, and is physically capable of actually managing that upcoming swarm flight out of the hive. And because the queen is laying less, you're going to notice less fresh brood and a lot more empty central cells. But honestly, you can almost just feel the swarm impulse in the workers themselves.
Experienced beekeepers will tell you the colony gets really sluggish when it comes to work. They're slower on the frames, they're kind of nervous or jumpy during inspections, and they totally stop focusing on building comb. Sometimes they even lose interest in foraging for nectar, even if there's a great flow going on. The whole hive just feels, heavier to manage. So we really need to make this crystal clear. The swarming impulse is a complete biological state of excess energy and reproductive preparation. It is an entire hive mindset. It's not just the sudden random appearance of a few queen cells. This is a massive biological buildup that we have to manage, rather than just a single event we try to fight at the very last minute. Moving right along to section 4, queen cells and the red alert. Basically, the phase of no return. Eventually, all that biological pressure manifests physically. Let's look at the actual construction of queen cells, which really marks the jump from subtle clues to a blaring red siren. Here's exactly how it escalates. Step 1, you see preventive empty queen cups appear. Now, don't panic yet. Bees build these just in case. It's not a guarantee they're swarming. But step 2, those cups get filled with eggs and larvae, and the numbers shoot up fast. Step 3, intensive feeding with royal jelly. Listen, this is your absolute final warning moment. You can still intervene here without taking huge losses. But step 4, capped queen cells. At this point, swarm departure is incoming incredibly fast, and it is almost definitely too late. And that brings us to, honestly, one of the biggest mistakes in all of beekeeping, the myth that just destroying those queen cells will magically stop the swarm. Look, if the colony is deeply locked into that swarming state, simply squishing a few cells does absolutely nothing to change the underlying biology. You're literally just treating a symptom, not the root cause. If you destroy them, they are just going to build more, and they will do it incredibly fast. So, section 5, professional swarm prevention methods, or how to manage colony energy. If we can't just squash the cells, what on earth do we actually do? Let's open our final chapter and look at the professional playbook. Remember, the goal here isn't to fight their nature, it's to manage their energy. Temperature and space are absolutely massive here. Check out this comparison. Overcrowded colonies with poor ventilation heat up incredibly fast. The bees have to spend so much energy just trying to cool the place down. That high stress sends a clear signal that it's time to divide and escape the pressure. But on the flip side, if you provide good airflow and expanded space, you keep the colony relaxed, comfortable, and completely focused on production. And we also need to talk about the long game, because let's face it, not all bees are created equal. Some genetic lines just have a way stronger swarming impulse, even if you are the best beekeeper in the world. Serious queen selection is your best long-term defense. Colonies with stable genetics work longer, they utilize nectar way better, and they naturally have a much higher tolerance for overcrowding before they panic and decide to swarm. To quickly summarize the pro steps, you've got to think several moves ahead. Number 1, expand your hive space. On time, do it early. Number 2, give them strong ventilation so they don't overheat. Number 3, meticulously control the brood nest so it doesn't get blocked and the queen always has room. And number 4, replace those old queens with stable, highly selected genetics.
You know, the biggest difference between a beginner and a true pro isn't how many hives they own, it's how early they spot these signs. The bees are telling you what they're going to do long before they lift off. The real question is, can you safely relieve that pressure? Do you actually know how to expand the hive and add space without accidentally weakening the colony right before a main nectar flow? Because if you mess that up, you can actually speed up the swarming process. And that is exactly what we are going to tackle in our next explainer. So keep observing, stay proactive out there, and I'll see you next time.